Sunday, 5 p.m. The Melvies, Mr. and Mrs. Melvie, and their 2 children, Craig, 22, and Billy, 16, live in a 2-storey place situated 6 doors down on our side of the street. Haven't been here since Craig got a pamphlet with 101 wrestling holds and convinced Niles and I to come and try them out with Dick and himself. Not only did it hurt when Craig put his knee in the middle of my back and pulled my head towards him, the Boston Crab, but once you cry in front of a neighbour, they have something against you for the rest of your life. Weakness is a stain. Sometimes when you try to clean it, you just smear it wider and it stands out even more, especially if it's on a pale surface. At Craig's, we played a similar wrestling game to the Gumleys, but at the Melvies, we used the technical names for the wrestling holds, and we each had our own special wrestling names. Craig was Charlie the Choker, Dick was Columbine Clonker, Niles and I were Johnny Grapes and Earl Sausage, respectively. The Melvies' door is open, but their screen door is locked. A pungent meaty odour wafts out from within, like they're stewing leather belts in there or something. I don't like the Melvies. The only reason I want them to come to my party is for the extra numbers, and Craig will help attract the Lexies. Mrs. Melvie appears out of the darkness, dressed in a skimpy white tennis outfit. She's tanned, with a black bubble of hair and spongy thighs. Craig isn't here. She's got such a gruff manner, Mrs. Melvie. I've come to invite your family to my 21st, Mrs. Melvie. Billy, a 16-year-old carbon copy of her mother, nestles in behind her shoulder and listens as I explain the details of my party. This is my first port of call, so I'm a little long-winded. Mrs. Melvie is distracted and only responds with an occasional yep, like she's a fox terrier that's just heard a knock at the door. However, towards the end of the encounter, I managed to manoeuvre our conversation onto the Gumleys. What about the big bang on Thursday night, eh? I say. Yep. You hear it? Yep. Then I say, what do you reckon? As a way of sounding her out, trying to see if she knows anything. I don't want her to think I already know the answer. When I'm sure she doesn't know anything, I fire my first torpedo. Mrs. Gumley drove a car through the front gates. Mrs. Melvie glances at Billy, then fixes back on me. Fire too. She forgot to open the gates and they got stuck on the bumper bar. Narrowing her eyes as if she doesn't believe me, Mrs. Melvie whispers, I thought Mrs. Gumley is not allowed to drive anymore. Slightly stung by her return fire, I hit back with another salvo. I saw her driving, I say. There's this terrifying pause while Mrs. Melvie stares at me and I assess the damage she's inflicted. There's always an expectation to say something clever after a long pause, so I give her everything I've got. 5-3, 5-4. She normally has the blonde driver, you know, the blonde guy, but he wasn't there, so she got plastered and drove herself home. Really? She says. Lucky she wears thick eyeliner because it stopped her eyeballs being swept completely out of her head. Mr. Gumley spent an hour. Mrs. Melvie stops me with a subtle hand gesture and lowers her voice to a whisper. Careful what you say about Mr. Gumley. Why? He's involved with that Vienna restaurant, the illegal casino, the place above the laundromat. When there's a raid there, a little light goes off, which means you have half an hour to leave before the police arrive. Police? Remember last year when that girl was beaten up and left for dead? No. It's all tied in with the Vienna. Satisfied she's trumped me, she reverts to her louder voice. Anyway, we can't come to your party because we've got the tennis finals, haven't we, Snugglepuss? Billy bristles when her mother calls her Snugglepuss. I might use that against Billy at a later date. After a playful punch between mother and daughter, Mrs. Melvey pushes me out the door with a crisp backhand volley. Gotta go, Sandy. Can you tell Craig about my party, I say? Yep. Make sure you tell Craig.